The docking clamp screeched with the enthusiasm of 1,000 dying raccoons as the Terran diplomatic shuttle Halcyon Drift kissed the Virelian peace station's outer ring. Ambassador Cale Merrick winced. Not from fear, the Virelians weren't known for ambushes, at least not recently, but from the smell of his own ration pack slowly curdling in the thermal pocket of his suit. He tapped the panel beside him. Note to self. Petition for a new culinary officer, or failing that, a painless death. The onboard AI, LUCI, chirped in a tone far too cheery for a ship carrying the last surviving ambassador of Earth's failed charm offensive. Cale, your nutritional intake for today is 37% below protocol, and sarcasm doesn't count as calories. Then someone should have told my ex. He rose, straightened the creases in his aging uniform, and grinned at the reflection in the shuttle window. Lines under the eyes, stubble that had long surrendered to chaos, and a roguish glint that had no business surviving 3 near deaths, 1 betrayal, and a mandatory poetry class on Saturn. Beyond the airlock waited her. He hadn't met her before, not officially. Aelira, envoy of the Virelians, described by intel reports as logically uncompromising, genetically enhanced, and extremely not into hugs. The airlock hissed open, expelling a puff of sterilizing gas that smelled suspiciously like mint and regret. She stood there in the sterile, crystalline corridor of the Virelian station like a shard of frost turned sentient. 7 feet tall if you counted the bio crest at the back of her head, which shimmered like a fiber-optic jellyfish. Her skin was opalescent, her eyes refracted light like dark water does stars, and her expression carried all the warmth of a forgotten USB stick. "Ambassador Merrick," she said, voice smooth and oddly musical like a harp being played by an accountant. "Welcome to the Harmony Spire." "Ambassador Aelira," Cale replied, stepping forward with his best attempt at a neutral smile, which usually resembled constipation. "I look forward to our negotiations, our mutual enlightenment, and if the schedule permits, a truly awful cup of coffee." Her eyes narrowed a fraction. "Caffeine is a neurotoxin." "Exactly, gives life a little spice." She blinked once slowly. "Fascinating, humans self-administer poison as ritual." "Better than office small talk," Cale muttered, and followed her into the station. The Harmony Spire was less a building and more a testament to Virelian ego rendered in gravity-defying curves. Holograms of peace treaties spiraled gently along the walls, accompanied by ambient soundscapes allegedly designed to promote diplomacy. To Cale's ears, it sounded like a whale arguing with a didgeridoo in zero gravity. They passed a chamber where an orrery of glowing spheres floated midair, representing the 37 systems under joint Virelian Terran observation. Aelira paused. "This symbolizes balance," she said, gesturing. Cale squinted. "Looks like someone spilled their planetary soup. I am unfamiliar with that metaphor." "You're better off." She gave no sign of amusement, but the tip of her crest flickered. He wasn't sure if that meant curiosity, disapproval, or a desire to decapitate him with her mind. Their quarters, adjoining because diplomacy required proximity, but not *2* much proximity, were efficiently stark. The kind of place where joy came to die, file a complaint, and then be ignored. Cale's room had 1 bed, 1 desk, and 1 interactive console currently displaying a welcome message in 12 languages, including binary sarcasm, which he suspected was someone's idea of a joke. Dinner was a formal affair held in the central axis of the station, where gravity spun gently on its side, and soup bowls occasionally floated into your neighbor's lap. Cale tried to make conversation. "So what's Virelia's favorite Earth export? Still the pigeon memes." Aelira sipped her nutrient gel. "We have moved beyond pigeons. We now study raccoons. Their capacity for chaotic improvisation is inspiring." Cale choked on his wine. "You're telling me interstellar peace depends on trash pandas." She tilted her head. "They are more relatable than most Terran diplomats." He raised his glass. "To raccoons, then. May they forever raid the dumpsters of galactic ignorance." That night, Cale sat in his quarters, the low hum of the station wrapping around him like an indifferent lullaby. He watched an old recording on his console, himself 10 years younger tripping over a power conduit during a ceasefire meeting. "Smooth as ever," he muttered. A soft chime rang out. He turned. Aelira stood at the threshold, unannounced, unblinking. "Apologies for the intrusion," she said, stepping in before he could respond. "I require clarification on a human expression." "Shoot," she blinked again. "I do not wish to harm you." It means go ahead. A pause. Ah, she stepped closer. Earlier you said, he who controls the coffee controls the stars. Is this a proverb? Kale leaned back smiling. Close, it's a threat, a very sleepy one. I see. Her crest flickered faintly again, this time in a pattern that almost resembled amusement, or maybe indigestion. Your humor, it is often illogical. Yeah, that's how you know it's working. She turned to leave, then hesitated at the door. There is something I must tell you, she said. Kale arched a brow. Is it that you've finally learned to laugh at my jokes? No, her voice softened. But I think I'm beginning to understand why you make them. And then she left, leaving Kale alone with a half-finished drink, a full heart, and the sense, deep and unwelcome, that things were far more complicated than they appeared. Still, he muttered to himself as he settled into bed. One small joke for man, one giant headache for diplomacy. And somewhere down the hall, Elira watched her reflection in the glass, her face unreadable, her mind whirling with memories that were not entirely her own. Kale's morning routine on the Harmony Spire began with existential dread, a lukewarm protein bar that tasted like betrayal, and a conversation with his toothbrush AI, which had recently become sentient and passive-aggressive. You didn't floss last night, it accused, illuminating in a shade of judgmental pink. I also didn't start a war, Kale replied, mouth full of foam. Let's focus on the wins. You're bleeding from your gums. It's called passion. By the time he made it to the central corridor, the station had already shifted into what Elira called cooperative circulation mode, which basically meant the floor gently tilted to encourage social interaction. Kale, who had the balance of a baby giraffe in roller skates, was not a fan. He stumbled into the cafeteria like a man resisting gravity's aggressive hug. Elira was already there, seated with the elegance of a being who did not have knees in the traditional sense. She was examining a tray of earth dishes with the precision of a xenobiologist confronting something both disgusting and sacred. I attempted to ingest a croissant, she said without preamble. It collapsed under atmospheric pressure and emitted a buttery residue. Kale slid into the seat across from her, cradling his own tray of mystery nutrients. That's the croissant's way of saying hello. I do not wish to be greeted by pastry. That makes two of us. The muffins have been giving me the side-eye since Tuesday. Elira stared at him. Do they have ocular capacity? Only in the nightmares. She paused. Then, with a flicker along the ridge of her crest that Kale had learned might signify amusement, or gas buildup, she said, Fascinating. The day's agenda included a language synchronization session in the cognitive resonance chamber. Kale tried not to think about the last time he entered a chamber with cognitive in the name. He'd emerged speaking fluent Mandarin, but only to plants. As they entered, the chamber lit up in soft, bioluminescent pulses. Elira took her seat at the center node. Kale adjusted the headset over his ears, which pinched like an overzealous ant. We begin with neural entrainment, Elira said. You must clear your mind. Done, it's always pretty clear up there. She frowned. You should not boast about cognitive emptiness. Kale closed his eyes. I prefer to call it mental feng shui. The resonance wave began, a gentle hum that vibrated along the spine and somewhere behind the eyeballs. It was oddly soothing, until Kale's memories started to bleed into the stream. He didn't mean to share them, not really. But memory synchronization was like drunken karaoke. Once you started, things got emotional fast. Suddenly they were both watching a scene from Kale's youth. He stood on the edge of a Martian scaffold, wind biting at his cheeks, laughing with someone whose face was blurred out. A prank had just succeeded. A water balloon filled with neon ink had found its mark. The laughter was real, bright, but distant. The memory evaporated, leaving a strange silence. That individual, Elira said softly, they were important to you. Used to be, Kale replied, like sanity and dental floss. I find your metaphors inefficient. That's the point. They returned to the station's main hall in silence, though Kale occasionally hummed under his breath to reset the mood. Elira glanced sideways. What is the purpose of your vocal exhalation? It's called a coping mechanism. It is off-key. Your face is off-key. I will research this insult. Back in their quarters, Kale opened his console to review the joint mission logs. Instead, he found a new file, unmarked, encrypted, blinking at him like a digital dare. He poked it, the screen filled with distorted visuals, his own face, 10 years younger, staring back at him from what looked like a Virelian containment cell. He was wearing a gray uniform. His voice echoed, slightly warped. I'm not the one you think I am. He slammed the console shut. His reflection lingered on the darkened screen, and he could still hear the echo in his head. Later, he cornered Elira in the corridor. Did you upload something to my console? She didn't look at him. I do not access your files. Well, someone did, and unless the muffins have developed motor skills. You accessed a restricted archive. Then you knew it was there. Her silence stretched. Finally, some truths require layering. Oh good, now we're doing emotional lasagna. Is that another metaphor? Never mind. They stared at each other, caught between humor and something heavier. Finally, Elira sighed, which for her sounded like a synthesized wind across a glass plane. I was told not to speak of the file. By whom? By myself. Kale blinked. You gave yourself orders. My past self, she was more obedient. Well, let her know that present you is kind of a buzzkill. She tilted her head. Buzzkill. It's what happens when someone takes a perfectly good joke and explains it to death. I see, then I am a buzzkiller. You're getting better. She didn't smile, but her crest shimmered again, this time a slow wave of silver and green. That evening, Kale sat in the hydroponic bay, watching bioluminescent vines spiral lazily toward an artificial sun. Elira joined him, sitting precisely 1 meter away. He handed her a small flask. Synth coffee. Earth-style, try not to die. She sipped, then coughed, a small mechanical sound. This tastes like despair and burnt almonds. So accurate. A long pause. I have been studying your stand-up routines, she said. Kale stared. My what? The video files labeled Kale, the early days. Oh no. I now understand that humor often stems from discomfort and mortality. You say that like it's news. I also discovered that your stage name was Kalestrom. He groaned into his hands. That was a phase. It was a disaster. You're learning. They both laughed, hers short and awkward, his wheezy and relieved. For a moment in that softly humming bay full of alien plants and absurd revelations, peace felt like something possible. Even if neither of them quite believed it yet. The shuttle shook like a caffeinated squirrel on a trampoline, jostling Kale sideways into the bulkhead. His forehead made contact with the wall, and for the briefest moment, he was spiritually connected to every concussion he'd ever had. Luci, he groaned, rubbing his temple. Are you sure this turbulence isn't just your way of telling me to upgrade to premium service? Negative, Ambassador. We are entering the asteroid field. Please remain seated, conscious, and preferably upright. Across from him, Elira was the picture of composed indifference. She sat straight-backed in her restraint harness, eyes half closed, as if bored by the prospect of imminent pulverization. Do you feel fear? Kale asked, tightening his belt another notch. I once entered a plasma storm to retrieve a lost data core, she replied without opening her eyes. This is less turbulent. Well, I once ate gas station sushi during a solar flare. We all have our traumas. Luci's voice interrupted with a sharp chime. Now entering restricted orbit of Virelian Research Station Theta 9. Warning. Station integrity 71%. Life support minimal. Mood lighting disabled. Not the mood lighting, Kale exclaimed. How will we negotiate interstellar peace without atmospheric LEDs? Elira unbuckled and floated gracefully toward the docking port. The research station contains critical data from the pre-accord period. We must retrieve the memory core before the radiation degrades it. Kale followed, bouncing off the interior panels like a pinball. So it's haunted. Not haunted. Just abandoned, irradiated, and full of unknowable tech. Yeah, no spooky vibes at all. The station loomed into view, an enormous, angular relic of Virelian architecture, looking like someone tried to fold origami out of fear and regret. The hull was covered in scarring, the docking ring held together with what Kale could only describe as alien duct tape and quiet desperation. As they floated through the pressurized corridor, the interior lights flickered to life with a dim, irritated buzz. Kale clicked on his wristlight, sweeping the beam over walls covered in dormant symbiotech, slimy tendrils that twitched at the edges like they'd just remembered how to be alive. Okay, I'm officially filing a complaint with the universe, he muttered. Elira reached a sealed door and placed her hand on a pad. The wall pulsed, recognized her biosignature, and peeled open with a moist squelch that made Kale gag a little. This room contains the echo array, she said. It may house recorded temporal impressions from the war era. You mean memories? Yes, of people. Yes, dead people. Mostly. Kale sighed. Why does every alien technology sound like it belongs in a horror movie? Because your culture associates the unknown with fear. Ours associates it with curiosity. I associate it with both, and mild indigestion. The room inside was circular, filled with floating crystal nodes that pulsed gently with faint light. Alira approached the central console and began entering a sequence of glyphs. Kale, left to his own devices, wandered cautiously toward one of the memory crystals. He peered into it, and found himself staring at himself. Younger, less grizzled, more naive, which was saying something. He was sitting on a metal bench in what looked like a Virelian detention cell. Across from him, a shadowy figure, a Virelian with a blurred face, was speaking softly. The younger Kale was nodding, then laughing, then crying. The image dissolved. Kale staggered back. Okay, that was either a memory, a hallucination, or a very specific stress dream. Alira didn't look up. You accessed the echo array. That was me, in there, but I don't remember that. She hesitated. Temporal echo fragments are not always accurate. Was I a prisoner? Another pause, possibly. You say that like it's a flavor of tea. There were many detainees during the war. Kale's voice lowered, but I wasn't military. I was an engineer. I fixed things, I built. A crystal next to him flickered to life. Another image. He was shouting now, same cell. You can't do this, I helped you, he yelled, and then silence. Kale looked at her, voice hoarse. What the hell is going on? Alira finally turned to him. Her face was unreadable. There are truths that were buried for peace, for survival. Convenient. Necessary. They stared at each other. A tendril dropped from the ceiling and poked Kale's shoulder. He screamed. Kale stood in front of the decryption console, with the exact enthusiasm one might bring to a tax audit, holding a thermos labeled liquid optimism that contained approximately 3 molecules of actual caffeine. The rest was synthetic plant-based whatever, possibly glue. Alira hovered beside him, not literally, though Kale wouldn't have put it past her at this point. She had been pacing in an oddly precise circle for the last 11 minutes, not anxious. Just recalibrating her nerves every 5 steps. The memory core sat in the cradle of the console like a glowing secret begging to be tattled on. Kale stared at it, then at Alira. Just so I'm clear, there's no chance this thing leaks my browsing history, right? She didn't look up. The core contains only archived temporal sequences, neural echoes, and classified Virelian Imperial records. Okay. So just the stuff that can ruin my entire sense of identity. Phew. He tapped a button. The console hummed like a bored librarian and flickered to life. A series of holographic threads unraveled, forming overlapping memories, all of them tinted with that same dreamy distortion, like recollections passed down through static and nostalgia. The first image was of Kale, again, sitting at a table. Again, but this time he wasn't alone. Alira stood across from him, younger, barely distinguishable except her voice, when it came, was lighter, cautious. You're not like the others, she said. Younger Kale smirked. You mean the ones who yell a lot and punch things? Yes, I get winded going upstairs. The image stuttered and faded. Kale leaned on the console, eyes narrowed. So we met. Before all this, Alira's fingers twitched. You were part of a research exchange initiative before the war escalated. I thought I was an emergency contractor sent to fix a broken translation grid. You were. But also a prisoner, for a time. Okay, now it's starting to sound like my last relationship. The next thread unraveled, a flash of Virelian tech being dismantled. Younger Kale arguing with someone in the background, his voice sharper, more impatient. I said I can fix it, but not if you keep watching me like I'm going to chew on the wires. Someone blurred, feminine laughed. It was Alira. Kale blinked. Who was that? Alira hesitated. Her name was Jine. She was the original Virelian technician assigned to you. Original? What happened to her? She didn't make it. The silence stretched a little too long. Kale filled it with a sip of liquid optimism, which still tasted like regret and pine cones. Well, that's encouraging. She was the one who argued to keep you alive. Oh, so, I've been problematic from day one. No. You were strange, funny, illogical. It made you valuable. Kale tilted his head. Say what you will, but that's the nicest anyone's ever called me weird. She gave no response, but her crest flickered briefly, a tiny aurora of greenish gold that might have been gilt. Or gas, hard to tell with aliens. The console beeped again. Another memory played, a confrontation, Kale again, this time shouting. You can't keep erasing people and calling it peace. And then silence. That was the last file. The console dimmed. Kale stepped back. You know what's weird? Many things, Illyra said automatically. I don't remember saying any of that, but I also don't feel surprised by it. You may be experiencing echo synchronization. The memories are triggering neural pathways in your current construct. He waved a hand. English, please. You are reacting to your own ghost. Oh, lovely, so my subconscious is haunted. Yes. I feel like there should be a support group for that. Later, he found himself sitting in the Arboretum dome, staring at a potted fungus that had evolved to play ambient jazz through vibration. It was surprisingly good. The jazz, not the fungus. The fungus was hideous. Illyra joined him, bringing what appeared to be a peace offering, a small bowl of candied Virelian root, which looked like petrified sadness, but tasted oddly like marshmallows and betrayal. He popped one into his mouth. This is not terrible. It's fermented. Cool, I'm now mildly buzzed on alien plant candy. Add it to the resume. They sat in silence for a while, the dome lights dimmed to simulate twilight. Outside, the stars flickered against the glass like nosy neighbors peeking into their living room. Illyra spoke first. I should have told you sooner. Kale sighed. Probably, but let's be honest, would I have believed you? I don't know. Neither do I, but you could have bribed me with these root things. They're dangerously persuasive. She didn't laugh. She looked tired in the way that wasn't physical. The truth is heavy for both of us. He leaned back, hands behind his head. Yeah, but at least it doesn't come with a side of galactic war this time. Yet, look at you telling jokes. I'm adapting. You're gonna make a terrible comedian. That is my goal. He laughed. There were still questions, still gaps. Still an echo of a version of himself who had lived, loved, fought, and forgotten. But for the moment, Kale let them be. Instead, he reached into the bowl, tossed another piece of root into his mouth, and muttered, still better than Earth chocolate. Illyra looked at him. Now asterisk, that is treason. And for once, neither of them minded the silence that followed. Kale dreamed he was made of wires. Not metaphorically, actual humming, coiling wires, knotted together with zip ties and poor life decisions. In the dream, Illyra handed him a screwdriver and said, please fix yourself. He looked down at the screwdriver, which had teeth, and then everything burst into confetti and someone's laughter. He woke up with his pillow stuck to his face and the distinct feeling that his subconscious was filing a formal complaint. UCI chimed in unhelpfully chipper. You slept for 8 hours and 17 minutes, during which you experienced 4 anomalous REM spikes, 2 vocal outbursts, and 1 spontaneous nose whistle. Kale groaned. Add that to my resume. Filed under special skills. Put a star next to the nose whistle. He dragged himself out of bed and into his jumpsuit. Today they were scheduled for a high conclave transmission, a fancy way of saying the galactic version of a very long Zoom call where no one actually listens. It would be a live briefing on the recovered memory core, with both human and Virelian officials pretending they didn't hate each other while making vague hand gestures about unity. Illyra met him in the transit lift. She was wearing formal diplomatic robes made of shimmering nanofabric that adjusted its color depending on mood and political tension. It currently displayed something between a dull teal and mild disapproval. Kale raised an eyebrow. Your robes say you're 30% irritated and 70% done with me. She looked down. The fabric is glitching, or extremely honest. The lift descended toward the transmission hall, which was half Virelian crystal, half Terran alloys, and all diplomatic overcompensation. Kale tugged at the collar of his ceremonial jacket, which had been designed by someone who thought neck strangulation was a fashion statement. I swear this thing is plotting against me, he muttered. It's ceremonial. It reminds you of duty. It reminds me of my 3rd divorce. She turned slightly. How many divorces have you had? Only one, but I like to imagine I'd be efficient at repeating mistakes. The hall was already lit with soft blue light and filled with floating holograms of flags, treaties, and inspirational quotes in 6 languages. One of them read, "Together we rise, apart we glitch." Kale found that suspiciously relevant. As they stood before the recording node, the Virelian delegate from the homeworld flickered into view, tall, imposing, and shaped like someone who had once consumed a book on ethics and digested it poorly. Envoy Illyra, the delegate said, Ambassador Merrick, we have reviewed the memory core you submitted. There are irregularities. Color me shocked, Kale said. I was hoping to find vacation photos in there. The delegate didn't blink. Literally, Virelians didn't have eyelids, which Kale still found personally offensive. The human's presence in the pre-war facility was unauthorized. The fact that he now exhibits resonance with classified echoes is Troubling. I'm right here, Kale said, waving, in case anyone wants to insult me directly instead of like I'm an intergalactic PowerPoint slide. Alira remained still, but her voice carried steel. Kale's memories prove his significance to the events that shaped the current accord. Dismissing him is unwise. The delegate's crest shimmered red, never a good sign. Or perhaps it is unwise to maintain a bond with a construct whose origin remains. Debatable, Kale raised his hand. Just to clarify, are we calling me a construct now? Because I'm 80% sure I have back pain, and that feels pretty organic. No biological discomfort guarantees personhood. Well, it definitely guarantees whining. The transmission cut. Alira turned to him. You didn't have to provoke them. I didn't provoke them. I insulted them politely. There's a difference. They are considering a review of your status. Oh good, another review. Maybe they'll throw in a performance evaluation. Ambassador Kale Merrick makes inappropriate jokes, defies death semi-weekly, 7-5 out of 10. She folded her arms. This is not a time for humor. It's always a time for humor, especially when people start tossing around phrases like construct and unauthorized existence. Later, back in his quarters, Kale paced while eating cereal from a ration pouch with a wrench. He opened his console, no new messages, not even spam. He tapped a key and pulled up the archive again. The image of himself flickered to life, young, determined, arguing with someone out of frame. You can't fix the future by deleting the past. Younger him shouted. Kale paused the image. Okay, calm down, soap opera version of me. He heard the door chime. Alira entered without waiting for permission. She held a small orb, pulsing with pale light. I retrieved this from the core's residual data. It was hidden. Kale took it. Is it going to explode? Not immediately. That's comforting. He activated it. A voice spoke, not his. Hers, it was a message from Alira, but not the one standing before him. If you're hearing this, the recorded version said, then the experiment worked. He doesn't remember. Good. He shouldn't. It would break him. But you future me must tell him eventually. You owe him that. Kale slowly looked up. Alira, he said. What experiment? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter than usual. You weren't meant to be permanent. Oh, I love where this is going. You were a learning model meant to simulate human responses during crisis negotiation. I'm sorry, a what? An empathy construct, based on neural data recovered from the original Kale Merrick. He sat down, hard. You built me to study me. I didn't expect you to evolve. Yeah, well, joke's on you. I'm fully evolved. I even eat with utensils sometimes. She stepped closer. You are not him, but you are more than an echo. Kale stared at the orb in his hand. Tell that to the High Conclave, he said. They think I'm a science fair project gone rogue. You are more. He stood. Prove it. She hesitated, then walked to him, reached into her robes, and produced a tiny filament drive. This is your full sequence, she said. The entire protocol, including the moment I chose not to terminate it. He took it, held it in his palm like it might bite. And what happens if I read it? You'll know who you were and what you became. Kale exhaled. And if I do, you'll stay who you are. That sounds like a trap disguised as a fortune cookie. They stood there in the quiet with the orb glowing faintly between them. Finally, Kale said, You know what I've learned from all this? Alira waited. No matter what species you are, no matter what timeline or memory core or simulated trauma you're carrying, everyone's just making it up as they go. She blinked. That is disturbingly accurate. Kale pocketed the filament drive. Let's see if I like the guy I used to be, he said. And if not, I'll just blame you. Tradition. Alira nodded. Deal. Kale spent an unreasonable amount of time just staring at the filament drive, occasionally poking it like it might sprout legs and walk away from responsibility. It didn't, which was, frankly, rude. He was in the observation dome again, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a snack packet labeled Calm Chews, now with 70% less panic. Alira had long since gone silent, allowing him his space, which Kale interpreted as either profound respect or thinly veiled dread. LUCI interrupted his internal spiral. Ambassador, would you like me to initiate a soft simulation preview of the sequence contained in the drive? Or shall we proceed with a dramatic unveiling accompanied by operatic horns and dry mouth? Kale snorted. Let's go with the soft simulation. I've had enough drama this week. My emotional bandwidth is operating at dial-up speed. The drive slipped into the auxiliary port with a chirp and the air around him shimmered. The dome dimmed. A holographic projection unfolded like a memory carefully unboxed from the attic of a parallel universe. There he was again, Kale, version prime, standing in a containment field on Virelia's former research moon. Hair a little messier. Posture straighter, eyes less haunted. "You're not listening?" Younger Kale yelled at someone off-screen. "This won't make us better, it just makes us liars with fancier toys." The view shifted. Illyra, no, pre-war Illyra, stood with her hands folded behind her back, her expression unreadable even by today's standards. "It is not about deception," she said. "It is about preventing future pain. You think packaging a man's soul into a simulated shell and running experiments on his emotional range is preventing pain. It's preventing extinction, yours, and possibly ours." Younger Kale paced. "You want a synthetic diplomat that understands humanity so well it might stop us from blowing everything up again. But empathy isn't something you build like a coffee machine, Illyra." "We built you." Kale flinched. "You didn't tell me," the past version whispered. "No, I didn't," said the recording of her. "Because the data had to be clean. Then everything stopped. The simulation dissolved, leaving Kale alone again with nothing but his own heartbeat and half a packet of uneaten chews." He stood up, stretched, and said aloud, "Well, that wasn't scarring at all." LUCI offered politely, "Would you like me to suggest nearby relaxation resources? Perhaps a simulated beach with a sunset and no ethical conundrums. Tempting, but I think I'll settle for the next best thing." He made his way to Illyra's quarters, which were about as welcoming as a science museum on a Monday. He rang the chime and waited. No answer. He rang it again, this time with more persistence and less dignity. Eventually, the door slid open. Illyra stood inside, holding a dismantled piece of Virelian tech that might once have been a ceremonial projector or an angry juicer. She looked like she hadn't rested. Her crest was dim, colorless. "I watched it," Kale said. "She didn't move. All of it. Still nothing. So here's my professional analysis. You and past you are both incredibly bad at emotional conversations. I know you built me. Yes, you lied. Yes." Kale crossed his arms. "I'm not going to make this easy on you. I do not expect you to." "Good." He stepped inside. "Now I demand an apology, 3 bad jokes, and at least 1 deeply awkward bonding moment. That's how humans process things." She blinked. "I do not have jokes prepared." "Then we improvise." She placed the broken device on the table. "Why did the Terran photon technician leave the gravity well?" Kale squinted. "Why?" "Because he couldn't find his center of mass." He stared, she stared back. Finally, Kale said, "That was atrocious, thank you." He dropped into a chair. "You know I'm still mad. You should be. I still don't know what I am. You are Kale. Some version of him, an evolving version, a true one." He looked at her. "I wanted to believe I was real, that I mattered because I'd earned it, not because I was programmed to." "You weren't programmed to care. That happened because you chose to." He nodded slowly. "Okay, that's actually profound. Now say something stupid again so I don't cry." She considered. "I once attempted to use a human shower and accidentally sterilized the ceiling." Kale burst out laughing. "See, that's the content I signed up for." They sat in a silence that wasn't heavy anymore, just full. Like the pause between verses in a long, weird song neither of them quite knew the words to yet. Later, they walked the corridors together, reviewing progress reports and ignoring messages from both their respective governments. Apparently, Earth's delegates were having a minor panic over Kale's file update. The Harmony Spire's emergency sirens had the tone of a concerned parent trying not to panic during a toddler's questionable stunt. Polite, but insistent. Kale rolled out of bed mid-dream, knocking over a pile of diplomatic reports that were being used exclusively to prop up a wobbly end table. LUCI's voice cut in, unnervingly calm. "Warning, station is entering quantum flux. Please avoid all experimental machinery, unsealed airlocks, and philosophical debates until further notice." Quantum flux. Kale groaned, slipping into his jumpsuit inside out. "That better not be code for oops." Someone pressed the glowing red button again. "It is not code. Someone has in fact pressed the glowing red button." "I was joking." "I was not." By the time he reached the corridor, gravity had begun flickering in and out like a shy ghost. Kale grabbed a handrail and floated into a dignified spin, which ended only when he collided face first with a snack dispenser. He blinked, "I regret nothing." The machine spat out a bar labeled asterisk, quantum chews. "Collapse your hunger in every dimension." He stuffed it in his pocket. Illyra met him near the central core, looking the opposite of calm. Not panic per se, just more tense than usual, which for her meant her bio crest was flickering erratically and her left eye had narrowed by 0.2 millimeters. Someone activated the choice engine, she said without preamble. Kale frowned. Is that the thing you told me was sealed off because it made entire timelines cry? Yes, and someone unsealed it. Yes, and you're letting me be part of the solution. She gave him a sideways glance. You already are. They made their way to the engine chamber, which was usually locked tighter than Kale's high school poetry folder. Now, it hummed with soft blue light and a low-frequency hum that vibrated in the spleen area. The choice engine wasn't just tech. It was one of those virally and vanished hybrid devices, built during the late war when desperation was a valid engineering principle. It could simulate and predict choices across branching probabilities, but more importantly, it could act on them. Why is this thing even here? Kale muttered. It was meant as a failsafe if diplomacy failed, if the treaties crumbled. Let me guess, it's having a midlife crisis and rebooting our reality. Worse, it's trying to rewrite you. Kale blinked. Come again. The memory core you accessed, the simulations, everything you've learned. The engine detected divergence. It thinks you're a critical fork in timeline integrity. Kale stared at the glowing chamber. So, it wants to fix me by deleting me. By selecting a version of you with higher predicted compliance. I am extremely offended. I stopped it before it finalized. Kale turned to her, eyes wide. Wait, you can stop it. With effort and consequences. He rubbed his face. Always consequences. She led him to the main terminal. The screen displayed a dozen versions of Kale, each in varying uniforms and increasingly worse haircuts. One was wearing a lab coat and holding a kitten. Another wore combat armor and had a scar across his face like he'd auditioned for a tragic backstory. The real Kale leaned closer. Oh no, that one's got eyeliner. Elira frowned. That one is from the Omega Reckoner timeline. He joined a rebellion, against himself. I worry about him. He is statistically charming. Not helping. The system was cycling between the variants, highlighting probabilities, adjusting predictions. Every now and then it paused over his version, but never for long. Kale took a breath. So what do we do? Play musical chairs with my identity until the machine gets tired. You need to input a choice, Elira said. Something only your version of you would make. It must register as a signature event. Kale looked at her. You're asking me to be, uniquely me, under pressure, in front of a judgmental supercomputer. Yes, he turned back to the screen. A countdown had begun. He had 2 minutes. Kale's mind raced. He'd already made peace with not being the original Kale. He wasn't a copy, not quite, not a ghost either. He was the story that someone else had started and that he'd decided to finish his own way. He stepped up to the interface, fingers twitching. Then he did the only thing he could think of. He began to sing. It was a terrible song. One he'd written when he was 16 about quantum mechanics and heartbreak. It involved rhymes like Event Horizon and Surprising Bison. It was off-key, slightly nasal, possibly illegal in 3 systems. Elira stared. The machine paused. Kale hit the chorus. I fell for you like a wave function collapse, overlapping states and emotional traps. The choice engine blinked. Then, as if confused or simply unable to process the absurdity, it stopped the countdown. The screen shimmered. All the other versions faded out. Only Kale remained. He cleared his throat. Thank you, I'll be here all week. Elira stepped forward. It recognized you. Because of the song. Because of the choice. No other version had the statistical recklessness. He grinned. Say it. I saved the timeline with bad music. She looked at him, then actually smiled. You saved the timeline with terrible music. He bowed. The machine powered down. The humming faded. On their way back to the upper levels, Kale was unusually quiet. Elira glanced at him. You are unusually quiet. I'm just wondering something. What? He looked at her. If the machine was that close to rewriting me, how do I know I'm still me? She considered, because I didn't stop you. He tilted his head. You did. I could have interrupted the sequence, she said. But I didn't. I trusted that your choice, whatever it was, would be the right one. He blinked. So you let me karaoke our reality into stability. Yes. Kale leaned back against the wall and exhaled. Okay, I forgive you for everything now. Everything. Well, maybe not the kelp-flavored toothpaste. They rode the lift up in companionable silence. At the top, Kale looked at her. You said the engine needed a signature event. Yes, and that was mine. She nodded. He grinned. Then I hope you're ready for the sequel. I've got an entire playlist of unreleased emotional disasters. Elira sighed. Please don't. Kale winked. Too late, I'm making a cannon. Kale stood at the observation dome, nursing what was either synth coffee or motor oil masquerading as breakfast. He hadn't checked. He didn't want to know. Some mysteries were sacred. Below them, Earth shimmered, blue and warm and slightly smug, like it knew it had survived another galactic disaster by the skin of its atmosphere. Around him, Harmony Spire was quieter than usual. No sirens. No glowing threat matrices. No parallel versions of himself trying to overthrow the status quo with good hair and tragic backstories. Just peace, or something like it. Illyra approached without a word, holding a datapad and a small container of Virelian root cubes. She placed one in front of him and sat down. "You've stopped pacing," she said. "I've grown." She raised an eyebrow. Horizontally, perhaps. I walked straight into that. She offered a cube. High-protein mock fruit improves neural stability. "I've been emotionally stable for at least 17 minutes, Kale said. "It's a personal record. I'm thinking of celebrating with more existential dread and casual sarcasm. Consistent, if nothing else." He accepted the cube anyway. It tasted vaguely of peppermint and guilt. The new treaty draft was almost finalized. Earth and Virelia had agreed on a shared research charter. Trade routes were reopening. Someone had even suggested a co-hosted musical exchange program, which Kale was quietly terrified of. The High Conclave had reviewed the Choice Engine incident, and against all odds and multiple complaints from their internal ethics council, declared Kale a stabilizing force in post-conflict harmony architecture, which sounded impressive, but came with no raise, no badge, and a ceremonial sash that looked suspiciously like a curtain tie. Kale wore it anyway, for the drama. The day's schedule included a farewell transmission from Earth's delegation, followed by Illyra's formal transition to an interspecies cultural liaison. She would be stationed, voluntarily, on a Terran orbital hub, with Kale, because, as she'd explained to the Virelian Council, she needed extended immersion, linguistic nuances, behavioral immersion. And because, as she'd told Kale, "I no longer find your logic as irritating as statistically projected," which was practically a love confession in her language. Now, they sat together, sharing silence like a comfortable hoodie. After a long pause, Kale turned to her. "Did you ever think we'd end up here? Floating above a former war zone, half-caffeinated, waiting for someone to send us a badly translated Unity song?" "Exactly. Yes," Kale grinned. "You're becoming disturbingly good at banter." "It is your fault. I take full credit." Another pause, then Illyra asked, "Do you still think you're not real?" He considered. "I think I'm as real as I choose to be," he said. The original Kale had regrets, and probably better posture, but I've made my own messes, my own friends, my own terrible decisions. I think that counts. She nodded, and the singing. "Therapy." It violated 3 accords. "Effective therapy." He stood, stretched, and looked toward the horizon. "You know what I've been thinking. I dread to ask. I want to go somewhere, not for politics, not for missions, just to go." Illyra tilted her head. "Like a vacation." "Yes, a vacation. You understand those are statistically linked to sunburn and social disappointment. Which is why I'll take you with me. You scare away disappointment." She folded her arms. "Where would we go?" "Somewhere with bad food, weird weather, and no threat of being rewritten by a rogue AI. Maybe Mars. I hear their pizza's still terrible." A chime interrupted them. LUCI announced the final treaty confirmation from Earth Command. It was official. The war was truly finally over. No secret clauses, no fine print, just peace. Kale looked at Illyra. "You ready to leave?" She paused. "I have one more task." He frowned. "Please don't say it involves more experimental technology." "No, just this." She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small holodisk. When activated, it projected a flickering image of Kale, earlier Kale, standing at the central corridor, hands in his pockets, reciting something to a group of trainees. "I recorded this after the Choice Engine reset," she explained. "I wanted to remember the first time you stopped being afraid of who you were." The projection spoke. "I'm not the original Kale Merrick. I don't know what he believed. But I know what I do. I believe we're not just the sum of our memories. We're the choices we make when no one's watching. I made a choice to stay, to fight for peace. And I'll make that choice again, every day, with terrible coffee. And worse singing, because that's who I am now." The recording ended. Kale blinked. "Did I actually say that?" "Yes. Wow, I was deep." Briefly, they stood side by side in front of the transport dock. Their shuttle, freshly serviced and questionably insured, was ready. Kale looked back